Come one, come all. Murder Church on a Tuesday night. We're still rocking Phil Spector. Get in here. We're on the last part of Dr. John Andrews, neuropathologist. We're doing part 4 of that tonight. 38 minutes before we go to the book club and catch up on chapters 24 and I believe 25. I still need to get that. I think that's where we're at. But anyways, we'll be going to the book club. Thanks everyone for getting in here. I appreciate it. Share it out on X. Share it out on any socials. Share it out on Discord. I'd really appreciate it. Let's go.
Let's rock.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? Murder Church on the air on a Tuesday night. Appreciate everyone for coming through here. We're still working on Phil Spector, believe it or not. Wildside coming through for me. Pokemon coming through for me. Simi coming through for me. Pammy coming through. Frog, Dave. Simi, everybody coming through. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. Teresa coming through. Hope everyone's having a good day, a good week. Welcome in here to Murder Church again. We're still plucking away. I'm going to keep doing this probably until we finish this thing now. I want to get this over with. Let's get the fuck through this thing. We're so freaking close. We're on video 211. We'll be done with Dr. John Andrews after this. We got Spitz coming up again soon. God only knows how many hours of that we have left. But we're going to keep working on it. After that, what are we doing? We're going to the book club. Immediately following this, if you're not in the Buzz Nation book club, get in there. And the only way to get in there is becoming a member here with the Buzz Nation at any level. Get you in the book club because I do a members only. And actually, I don't think did I make that a members only? Can I still do that? Hold on. Do that. Did I fuck that up? I think I can still do that. Let me make that a members only. But yes, that is how you can hang out with us because we're working our way through. Yeah, hold on. Member only. Boom. Done. Ski. That will be immediately following this. And the only way to get in there for that stream is to become a member. And again, we're working our way through The Stranger Beside Me. And it gets a little bit more interesting as we're getting through 1976 right now. And we're getting into some of those murder charges out of Colorado. Because currently in the book, he's only been convicted of the kidnapping of Carol DeRoche. But now we're getting ready to get into some more heavier waters, if you will, with Ted Bundy in the book. So again, come through the book club. And if you're unfamiliar, get in there anyways and get into the live section. I have a whole lot of videos with detailed notes for you, just for you. Bassett Page coming through here. Like to see it, like to see it, like to see it. Love it, guys. So far this week, one thing that I've got planned out, Thursday, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing. Friday, I don't even know what I'm doing. But Sunday, I do know. We're going to have Murder Church, of course, that morning. But again, coming back for part 2 of the last Ted Bundy interview. That's going to break down the rest of his analysis for us. Jack from Never a Truer Word. We're going to do part 2 of that Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's a really good time for both of us. So I'm excited about that. We'll be finishing that up this Sunday. But otherwise, I need to figure out what I'm doing for Friday. I've been contemplating winging this one, maybe doing this one by myself, but we'll see as we get a little bit closer to what's going on. I haven't reached out to anybody just yet. But without further ado, also we got the wheel still rocking and rolling, folks. And I actually ordered some new stickers, ordered some new Publicly Buzz stickers, and I ordered the Hell Yeah magnets, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. So we got some more stuff rocking and rolling and coming down the pike, but we still have a wheel going. We spun a wheel on Sunday morning, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see where we're at right now on this thing. Okay, yeah, we got 2 names already on this wheel, and again, you can get on the wheel by, let me show you real quick, donations directly to the old Cash App, Venmo or PayPal. We got a lot of lovely people who hooked me up with tips that way, which I really freaking appreciate. That's person to person. It doesn't come through the YouTube system, so they don't tax it. But I would say do that if you're going to get on. That also gets you on the wheel for some really cool stuff, like the Murder Church magnets. Like these are on the line right now. The sticker packs, Partner in Crime, Dandy Savage exclusive sticker that only 10 people are going to get, period. And another Murder Church sticker behind that. And also the exclusive Publicly Buzzed coasters that we are doing giveaways for as well. So you know how to get in there. And of course, even if you don't do a donation through those ways, you can always come through the YouTube with becoming a member, which gets you lots of other stuff, or giving funds through their system. But thank you all so much. Let's get the hell in here. Let's rock and roll. I got this son of a bitch up, and we're gonna go. Make sure I got the sound working. Boom, boom.
Court's again in session.
All right. The parties, jurors, alternates, the witnesses
That's
present
always
here
fun.
before you may resume.
Good afternoon, Dr. Andrews. Thank you for
Sometimes I'm
returning.
like, what was I saying?
We were talking about the subject of various points that you agreed with Dr. Leetsma. You mentioned you also had some agreements with Dr. Bond, but with Dr. Leetsma, did you agree with any of his opinions that he gave? Is that
yes?
Okay, and you don't question his qualifications as an expert in the field of neuropathology, do you?
No, the Jan Leesma that I knew when I was at Einstein was intellectually honest and very careful worker. I've got no reason to think that he didn't believe everything that he was testifying to the other day.
Okay, and you don't... Well, let me ask you this. With reference to
Hey, Shelley, thanks for that share on X.
his opinions as to
Appreciate
the movements
that. I shared
after
that
the
myself.
injury that Ms. Clarkson suffered,
Shared
you
your
agree with
share.
some of what he said. Is that true?
Sharon.
You'll have to be more specific, I'm afraid.
Is Sharon?
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Let's talk about Dr. Bodden, and then I'll show you some pictures, and then we'll talk about some issues when we get to the pictures, if we will. As far as Dr. Bodden is concerned, do you agree with the opinions that he gave?
Which opinions?
Some of the opinions? Any
Yes.
of them? Okay.
Yes.
How about the opinions regarding blood that got shot out of the mouth and tissue that got shot out of the mouth when the gun went off? Did you have any disagreements with those opinions?
Objection, that's beyond the scope.
Sustain.
Okay.
Trying to push that Alan Jackson.
Dr. Andrews, with reference to any inhalation of air, either in or
Karen
out,
Reed
do you
freaks
disagree
like
or
Alan
agree
Jackson.
with anything that Dr.
Trying to
Bodden
get
said
her-
regarding
Get
that?
them in here with that
If you
tease.
quote the particular
I
statement
hear the
you're interested
man.
in, I'll be
I heard
glad
him.
to
Objecting.
respond to it. You need to be a little bit more specific because that's a rather broad question, I'm afraid.
Okay, you said you agreed with some of the things that Dr. Bodden said. What do you agree with?
That's overbroad, Your Honor.
He's indicated he needs to be, just 1 second please, he needs to be directed to what you want him to agree or disagree with and offer an opinion, and then you can proceed with that as long as it's relevant to his testimony.
Do you disagree with this general concept that somebody can inhale blood and that can get in the alveoli of their lungs? Do you disagree with that general concept?
Not talking about Miss Clarkson, but just in general, a
In
living
general.
person could inhale blood?
Correct.
Oh, of course, yes.
Now, Dr. Andrews, as a board-certified forensic pathologist, how many forensic autopsies have you actually done, you yourself, and setting aside for the moment ones that you may have saw other people do or anything like that, just how many have you done in your career as a board-certified forensic pathologist? Your best estimate.
My best estimate is approximately 400, 450 in that general area, yes, sir.
And in these autopsies, how many of them have been, when you were board-certified, how many of them have been intraoral gunshot wounds that you have done?
I can't remember an exact number. I would say less than 10, probably.
Where inside the mouth gunshot wounds were the type of, or the mechanism causing death?
Yes, I don't remember an exact number, but it was not very many.
And the number of forensic autopsies that you've done where they've been, where the lung weight was, let's say, 1,800 grams or more, in other words, where the lungs were very heavy. Do you remember how many that were also gunshot wounds?
I don't remember, sir, no.
Now, Am I correct that you have not read the autopsy report, the full autopsy report of Dr. Pena? Is that my understanding?
I don't believe I've ever gone through that in detail, no.
Okay. Well, did you go over it in non-detail?
I glanced through it, yes.
Okay, but you did not read it, and you did not read the findings, and you don't have a general understanding of what they say. Is that
I
true?
remember briefly reviewing it. I think it was several years ago. I don't remember the details.
Okay, and as far as relying upon or giving opinions based upon the autopsy report, you don't have enough of a recollection of it that you're really giving an opinion based upon the findings at autopsy. Is that true?
My findings at autopsy were limited to the brain and spinal cord and their coverings, and that was my role in the case. And I have no comment on the general autopsy findings that were performed by Dr. Pena.
Okay, now, you've given testimony that the bullet was of a certain dimension.
Does sound like a
Is
robot.
that,
A little bit
are
like
you
a
accurate
robot.
in that dimension?
Well, all I can tell you is that I arrived at that estimate by a conversion formula that I found in a dictionary, a medical dictionary, and I know that the 38 special refers to 0.38 inches, and so I just simply converted that to millimeters and came out with roughly 9.6, so I said round it out to 9.5. That was the basis for that statement.
And it would be true, though, Doctor, that the actual bullet size is under 9. Is that true?
Is under 9?
Yeah, 9 millimeters.
Well, as I say, I was using a conversion factor that I found in a dictionary, so I was estimating it as 0.38 inches equals how many millimeters, and that's what the calculation told me.
And the same for the cord. You got that from some research as opposed to any actual measurement that was actually done in this case. Is that true?
In this case, I have measured that level of the spinal cord in other cases, and I've confirmed that in several other articles in the literature with regard to spinal cord size, and concluded that they were reasonably accurate within the range of standard deviation mentioned in the articles.
Now, the articles that you cited to us regarding the edema that occurs, there's a number of different factors that come into play when we talk about the lungs getting fluid in them or blood in them, and then weighing the lungs and trying to determine how it happened. Isn't that true?
That there are a number of different factors?
Yes.
Yes, in my opinion, yes.
Okay, sometimes in a clinical setting, people live for a matter of weeks or months, and then they pass away, and their lungs can be very full of fluid as well as blood, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Certainly.
Okay, and this article deals with a number of different circumstances, including whether somebody dies at a scene versus goes to a hospital and survives for a period of time. Isn't that correct?
I'd have to go back and look at the materials and methods in this particular article. That wasn't the purpose of the article,
Okay.
so I don't have that in my memory. I'd have to see the article again.
Okay, do you have it with you?
No, but you do.
Okay. So do people get fluid in the lungs when they die at the scene, within minutes of their fatal injury being inflicted? Can that happen?
Yes.
Does it always happen?
I'm sure it doesn't always happen.
In fact, the article suggests it happens in less than a third of the cases. Isn't that true?
It's not in every case.
Okay. And you can't state that it actually happened in this case, can you? You can't state
No,
that
and
as
in
a
my
fact.
testimony, I specified that.
Okay. And in the cases where it does happen, where people actually survive for a period of hours, the maximum weight that the lungs get is somewhere around 900 milligrams or grams. Is that true?
I don't know. I don't have that information in my head.
Okay. Now, you don't know whether even 1 gram was the caused by edema occurring in this particular case. Is that correct? You don't know that was the cause of any additional weight to the lungs. Isn't that correct?
I would be skeptical that the amount of blood and spinal fluid alone would account for that difference in weight in the lungs. So I would have to postulate that there was edema fluid in there as well. And what I was doing previously was giving you 3 different possible mechanisms by which that could occur without breathing having to be involved.
Now, with reference to the edema, basically the longer somebody is the heart is going, the more edema can collect in the lungs. In other words, that once the heart stops, the edema stops also. Is that basically correct?
Basically, that's correct.
And we know that the heart kept going for a period of time in this particular case. Is that also correct?
That's my belief, yes.
And the bleeding that occurred in all the different areas of the body would confirm that. Isn't that also true?
I didn't examine other areas of the body, so I can't say.
But you did examine the spinal cord, which showed bleeding in a number of areas. Is that true?
True.
And the brain, a number of areas bleeding. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And also edema in both the spinal cord and the brain. Isn't that true?
Yes, locally in the spinal cord at the site of the gunshot wound and also in other portions of the brain.
Okay, now you would expect bleeding to be at the areas of the spinal cord where it physically came in contact with a bullet, because it actually breaks apart the vessels, isn't that true?
Absolutely, yes,
But
sir.
in the areas that are not near the gunshot wound, there was also bleeding that basically suggests something else going on other than the actual gunshot wound itself. Isn't that true?
No, the gunshot wound would have been responsible, in my opinion, for those other areas of bleeding because of temporary cavity effect and because of secondary overpressure effects intracranially as a result of the gunshot wound.
What do you mean?
It's a closed cavity.
Go ahead.
And as the bullet goes through, it's going to create disturbances quite some distance from the bullet itself.
Okay, what do you mean by overpressure? If you could define that term and explain it to the jury.
Yes, there's a normal amount of pressure in the brain and in the spinal cord. And various things can increase that intracranial pressure and intraspinal pressure. One of them is brain swelling. Another one is in a situation like this where you have bleeding that can occur there. And there are many other circumstances under which increased cranial pressure can occur. In this instance, specific to Ms. Clarkson, part of that temporary sudden increase in pressure within the intracranial cavity was a result of the bullet going into this closed space and the temporary cavity effect that would have produced in the brain and spinal cord tissue. So that would account for this sudden spike in pressure that caused the outward bulging of the fracture that I saw as the scalp was removed in Miss Clarkson's autopsy. I was there at the time the scalp was reflected, and I noted in my report that was the case and that it was elevated. One of the fracture sides was elevated above the other one, and I don't remember the exact amount, but it's specified in my report. So that indicates what's called an overpressure, where it not only fractured the bone, but it lifted it away outward, which again indicates significant overpressure.
Now, the pressure is caused not by the gases, by something else. Is that your testimony?
Whether gas is also involved depends on the exact range and so on. I don't require gas to be involved in this case because the temporary cavity effects were sufficient, in my opinion, to be able to produce that kind of change. If gas is added to it, so be it. I can't say yes or no on that. It's possible.
Okay. Now, Dr. Andrews, with reference to the effect or the neurological effect of a bullet that goes into the brain, just in general, let's set aside Lada Clarkson's specific circumstances and let's talk about a general concept, then we'll bring it back to this particular case. Somebody shoots themselves in the brain or gets shot in the brain. That causes the nerves to quit working and basically the organs, the lungs, etc., to quit working. Is that correct?
You'd have to be more specific. What caliber, what muzzle velocity, what part of the brain? There are many variables, and it makes it impossible for me to answer that question with a yes or no.
So let's say a .38 caliber weapon that gets shot into the brain. Does it have any neurological shock effect as to the spinal cord?
What part of the brain?
The temple?
How far back in the temple? I'm not being difficult. I'm trying to be specific because let me give, if I may, give you an example of why I can't answer it just as such.
If I may interject, it appears that this line of questioning is irrelevant. She wasn't shot in the temple.
No, I understand.
I understand that, but I don't know where the questions are going. It may be relevant, it may not be. I can't tell you right now. All right?
I think there's so many variables, Your Honor, I'm never going to get anywhere, so I'm going to move on to another subject. So, Dr. Andrews, with reference to this particular case, did you determine from your independent evaluation of the spinal cord and the brain what the track of the bullet was? Were you able to do that, or were you asked to do that, or did you do it on your own, whatever the case may be?
I only specifically referred to the track of the bullet within the central nervous system specimens that I had, basically brain, spinal cord, and my report directly discussed that. I did not discuss the track of the bullet before it got to the spinal cord medulla junction or after that, but at the time of the autopsy, I did see some of the fractures. I did know from a later conversation with Dr. Pena that he felt that it went backward and slightly upward, and from my examination, I knew that it was midline or very close to midline. And also at the time of the autopsy, I saw within the skull, after the brain was removed, the bullet path that went through the occipital sinus, which is in the dura mater, and is directly in the midline, posterior to the cerebellum. And I think I even specified how many centimeters of occipital sinus the bullet path had disturbed. So I was familiar with that degree of the bullet path. I did not see the bullet when it was removed. I didn't see it in the subcutaneous tissue. That was not my focus.
And you didn't measure it?
Measure what?
The bullet.
No, I only understand from the material that I was told that it was a 38 special.
Okay. Now, this is focusing in on what you did, what you saw. You saw the bullet after it hit the spinal cord area. In other words, you mentioned that bones were broken there, and you saw that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and these bones, when they're broken, they're basically sharp. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and the bullet went from the spinal cord area when it went through the spine, and then it went and hit the back of the skull in some fashion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and was it at a higher elevation or a lower elevation or level?
The increase in elevation from front to back, if I'm talking only about from the spinal cord area to the occipital sinus, was slightly upward. It was very close to horizontal, but slightly upward.
Okay, and basically the same trajectory that was explained to you by Dr. Pena. You don't disagree with his description of the trajectory, is that correct?
Well, what I can recall of his description, no particular discrepancy was brought to my attention, no.
Did you see him do the measurements regarding the upward angle of the trajectory, anything such as that?
No.
Okay, and you didn't see him do the probe of, you know how they do a probe of a bullet path through a body? You didn't see him do that?
No. The way that I personally was looking at the situation was I saw his preliminary autopsy notes, I saw his diagrams, and then what I will often do, and what I did in this case was, I proceed to go to something like a CT or MRI radiologic type atlas, where they have a number of different diagrams and different angles, and in this instance, because it was so close to a midline shot, I did that, and I took a sagittal view of the brain, a diagram of that was based on an actual X-ray of a human skull and head. And I tried to see whether a path that is described by the deputy medical examiner makes anatomic sense in a straight line, or whether there might be an angling of that shot, such as from an internal ricochet or bouncing off of a bone and then changing the angle of the shot. And I will do that at times. I did it in this case. I saw no discrepancy between the description by Dr. Pena and what I had seen of the bullet wound path. And the reason that's important is because sometimes I will get a brain specimen, and where the bullet ends up and where the entrance wound is so discrepant that it doesn't quite fit what the deputy medical examiner thought. And then I have to question them carefully or explore the possibility of an internal ricochet, which can take a variety of forms. And we need to figure out how to fit the facts with what the possibilities are and come to the best conclusion possible. So in this case, it just happened to be one where I decided to verify Dr. Pena's description by my own review of the anatomy, and I did not find any discrepancy.
Okay, so to put that in sort of layman's terms, Dr. Pena saw the trajectory where the bullet entered the back of the throat, it hit the spine, and it broke some bones, but you didn't see any substantial deviation after that. Is that correct? layman's?
No, I did not see any change from what Dr. Pena described as far as the bullet wound path.
It kept in the exact, or pretty much the same direction it was going, and without shooting off to left, right, up, or down. Is that correct?
So close to being so that I could not see any reason to dispute how he described it.
Okay. Do I have a minute here?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Ooh, has made an appearance. Ladies and
Dr.
gentlemen.
Andrews, did Mr.
about to
Jackson
pass out
show you
on
any
us.
photographs
Needs a nudge, Linda.
of this case?
I don't remember him bringing any photographs, no.
Okay, and did he show you, for example, the scene where Lana Clarkson's
Yeah,
body
hold on.
was or anything like that?
He did not, but I have seen that photo at one of the other meetings several years ago.
Okay. In fact, you were at a meeting with Mr. Dixon one time when he asked you a bunch of questions. Is that correct? Or somebody at the meeting asked you questions?
About this particular photo?
No, about this case.
Should work. There you go. Shelley's should work.
Please
too.
restate that, I'm not sure. which
You
one
remember
it's
being at a meeting where well, never mind. I'll move on. This photograph you've seen before because you've been to meetings with members of the
There we
district
go. I
attorney's
think you just
office
jumped
and
in
members
here.
of the coroner's staff, yourself, Dr. Pena, Dr. Lakshmanan, et cetera. Is that correct?
There were meetings like that several years ago, yes. And
Okay.
then the recent meeting that I mentioned with Dr. Pena was there with Mr. Jackson.
Okay.
And Mr. O'Shea, I believe, was there also.
Okay, and did you take notes of this meeting by chance?
No,
How about Dr. Pena? Did he take notes to your knowledge?
I don't remember him having any paper or pencil in front of him.
Fair enough. Now, you gave an opinion in this case at one point in time that you could not, based upon your expertise in the field of neuropathology, you could not state whether or not Lana Clarkson was seated in the chair when the shot was fired versus standing up and fell into the chair. Is that correct? You've gone on record as saying that. Is that true?
Yeah, basically, the examination of the brain and spinal cord would not allow me to extrapolate situations with regard to her position in the chair. That's correct.
And there's nothing about the nature of the injury, the fact that it was inside the mouth, the fact that it was in an upward trajectory that didn't deviate left, right from the original path of the bullet, that negates from a neurological standpoint, that she could have been standing when she was fought and then
Holy
ended up in
shit. Mosh popping in the door. 28 months. What's up, dude? How you doing? That's incredible, man. That's fucking insane. Let's see if these are working tonight. I didn't check them. Yeah, we got a little bit of sound. Dude, that's incredible, dude.
Hold up!
28 months on the motherfucking roster, dude. That's crazy. That's insane. Thank you, Mosh.
this position that's shown in Exhibit
Yeah,
BB.
get together,
Is that
man.
true?
Please ask that again. It was kind
Do
of
some
complicated.
grilling. We were just
Okay,
talking about grilling.
There's nothing
Mosh
about
knows how to
her
grill.
position as shown in Exhibit BB that negates the possibility that she was standing when she was shot. In other words, there's nothing about the neurological damage from the bullet and its path and what it caused that would negate her being in this position, that she could have been standing as opposed to being seated, just from the neuropathology.
Okay.
Is that correct?
I can only answer that this way. I can't answer it yes or no. If you want me to continue.
Okay, well, is it if I understand your testimony, you can't say whether she was seated or standing, and then setting aside the blood spatter, that's a different subject that has been brought up in this case, but just from the neuropathology standpoint, can you
21 months. That's a
say
long-ass
whether
time
she was
also.
seated or standing when the shot was
Up on
fired?
2 years now, showing. Incredible.
No.
Okay, and let's just assume that she was seated for purposes of my next question, okay?
Dan
Can you-
Savage. I'm gonna have to shoot some footage at the deck. Look at that right there. 21 months. Coming through. Boom.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Boom. Trying to hit a different one every once in a while. Boom, Shelly. Love it. Thank you so much.
You state which way her head was when she was shot. Left, right, center, up, down, or anything such as that.
May I answer that in other than a yes or no?
Well, I mean, if you can state it's left or right or center or up or down, that's fine, but
I'm sorry, my objection is, it sounds like the doctor needs to explain his answer.
Well, I think I've given him every variable, and if he can't say yes or no, then I don't know.
Well, if you can answer yes or no, please do. If you cannot and you need to explain, you may explain.
I cannot.
All right, then do you wish him to explain?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I think that examination of wounds, and in which, in my case, was a very limited part of the autopsy, does not automatically make one an expert on crime scene investigation or the dynamics of a shooting situation, whether it be law enforcement related or non-law enforcement. I think that when we start to stray into those areas, when we don't have special training or expertise in those areas, is a pitfall. And I am willing to answer any questions and do the best I can to answer them when it has to do with my portion of the autopsy, but I think it's obvious that examination of the brain and spinal cord does not translate into me becoming an expert on her position at the time of the incident. I don't know how to answer these questions otherwise.
Okay. You were, so from just the neuropathological standpoint, in other words, neuropathology, you can't say she was or was not in this position that's shown in Exhibit BB. You can't answer that question, basically.
I cannot.
Okay. Are you stating that she had to be in this exact position based upon neuropathology? Are you saying that that is the position she was in when she was shot?
No.
Jack, that's the same question asked a different way.
Well,
It's just indicated he cannot say, he will not say that she's in that position or any other position. I mean, how many different ways?
It is phrased differently. He answered no, or he could not. So,
Oh, he did? Oh.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
But thank you for that lengthy objection.
I stand corrected.
All right, you may proceed.
Is there anything within the scope of your expertise, Dr. Andrews, within the scope of your expertise, no further, that precludes Lana Clarkson being in the position that she's shown in, but that before that she was in a different position when she put the gun in her mouth and pulled the trigger?
Objection, that assumes a fact definitely not in evidence.
The objection is sustained.
I want you to assume that Lana Clarkson put the gun in her mouth, 38 caliber that you read about. She pulled the trigger. Is there anything that precludes her from falling back in the chair, slumping in the position that she...
We probably got about a month, I'm going to say 2 months, probably like a little while left on this. I've been putting more time in, though, trying to get through her. On actual AJ, I don't know. I just know about 2007 AJ.
I would say that in order to answer that honestly and completely, I would like to have a situation where a person was standing in various postures and pretended that they suddenly went limp and tried to fall in various ways, and see if one of them ended up like that. I can't say that it's impossible.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
I want you to assume she's seated in the chair as opposed to standing. I want you to assume that she put the gun in her mouth, pulled the trigger with her thumb, held the gun with both hands, and had it inside her mouth. Is there anything that precludes her slumping in the chair and ending up in the position she's shown in on Exhibit BB?
I listened to that
Well,
song
I would
earlier.
consider it within the realm of possibility. It's certainly a very abnormal posture.
Literally
at this point.
a year.
It's not the way people usually sit, so I can't exclude it. No.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Nothing further, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Redirect.
Oh, that's it? I need to wake up. Can I have just a second?
We're going to get a little Alan Jackson. Good, I put him on the
Very
thumbnail.
briefly, Doctor, you indicated,
Trying to cash in on
stand
that.
up for this. Doctor, you indicated
That's what I
that with regard to Dr. Jan Leetsma, you
Thought
found him to
actually
be,
covered.
at least at the time that you knew him, intellectually honest and reasonable insofar as his opinions and conclusions were concerned, correct?
Yes.
Now, you have had an extensive clinical
thanks for
practice
hanging.
throughout your career, correct?
Yes.
And that is different from a lot of pathologists and neuropathologists who have been working on dead bodies their entire career, correct?
Yes.
You've seen extensively a vast number of trauma cases in live patients, patients who have lived. You've followed patients throughout their treatment, correct?
Yes.
And that is experience that a lot of pathologists and neuropathologists simply don't have, correct?
I believe that's so, yes.
Has that vast experience enhanced your knowledge base insofar as the foundation for what you've testified to here today and
I
yesterday?
In the Discord, Heather.
I think that it certainly does provide me with a broader base and a different type of experience in that I'm able to correlate both what happens in patients that survive an initial insult and then correlate that with the findings at pathology. We not only see our own patients, but we see interesting cases that others have examined and are the primary physician on. I've attended thousands of clinical pathological conferences on patients that were not mine, but that there was good evidence as to what the clinical findings were described by a clinician. Then the pathology would be demonstrated with slides or with descriptions. So all of that, I think, is helpful with some of the questions that I've been asked, certainly not all of them.
Doctor, you were
Marie,
asked on
what's
cross-examination whether or not you agreed with or disagreed with certain postulates put forward by Dr. Lietzma, and I think your answer was,
Yeah, it's not
I
been
believe
on here
he
today.
believed it,
Hey, see something trouble.
meaning the decerebrate posturing or the decerebrate rigidity with regard to Miss Lana Clarkson's injury. My question to you is this: regarding that decerebrate posturing, if Dr. Lietzma believed that in his opinion she may have experienced such decerebrate posturing, notwithstanding whether he believes that in his experience, based on your expertise and your experience, including all of your clinical practice and your clinical expertise, is Dr. Lietzma correct in your opinion?
No, Jack, that's an improper opinion.
Well, he just, at the end, he brought it back by basically saying, do you agree or disagree? That's what he's really asking.
And then it would be asked and answered, I think he's already given.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
No, I do not believe that decerebrate rigidity occurred after this gunshot wound for the reasons that I stated.
One quick question to make sure that we clear this up. You were asked by Mr. Plord whether or not the article that you cited by Gardner, Gardner, concerning the barium that we talked about, the barium that ended up moving through the body and down into the lung area.
Yes.
Mr. Plord asked you whether or not the article actually said, well, it just moved to the bronchi area, to the bronchial tree, if you will. Do you remember him asking you that?
Yes.
And you corrected him and indicated you just didn't read far enough. The next paragraph down indicates that, quote, barium was found in the lungs of 7 of the 10 bodies, and surprisingly, it had in some cases reached the alveoli, quote, end quote. Correct?
Yes, sir.
That's the study that you were referencing with regard to the blood in the alveoli and different mechanisms with which that blood could be accounted for being down that far into the recesses of the lungs, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Recross.
Yeah, just briefly. Dr. Andrews, when you talk about clinical findings, basically you're talking about a clinician that takes care of live patients and there's a clinical course of treatment that occurs. Is that true?
Well, side coming through and jumping on the wheel. Let me get you on here real quick, Wildside. I appreciate that. And who got that thing? Ohio Stephanie, welcome in here. Oh, shit. Let's go. Welcome them in, folks, with some beers in the chat. Appreciate that. Wildside, thank you so much. Yeah, building the wheel a little bit here. We're up to 3 names on that thing. Again, once we get 12 names, we got some goodies to give away, so we'll keep working on that. Thanks.
Depends on how long they live, but in general, yes, that's true.
Ohio, Stephanie, that also means tonight you can come through to the book club immediately following this in the next few minutes, actually. We're going to be heading to a members-only live stream where I go over The Stranger Beside Me. It's an Ann Rule book about Ted Bundy. She worked with Ted Bundy at a crisis call center, and we are about halfway through that thing. And if you're thinking, wow, I could not go into this halfway, I have all of my past lives that are still up for members only. You can still check those out, and there are detailed notes inside. So come through tonight, Ohio.
Clinical course, a live patient, treatment, clinician, they could live for an hour, a day, a week, a month, or forever until they die of old age. But clinical findings are related to that. Is that true?
To living patients.
Okay, and
That's right.
when you look
Lord,
at
appreciate that.
a pathology slide, that's a clinical determination as to what you see in that slide. Is that true?
No, that's a pathological determination.
Okay, and basically a pathological slide you look at and you basically see what's there and then you describe that in some fashion. Is that correct? And you come up with a diagnosis of that particular slide or a partial diagnosis, whatever the case may be. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes it's a negative, sometimes it's a positive. Something is not seen, something is seen. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in this particular case, you looked at brain tissue under slides, you looked at neurological tissue, then you've also looked at lung tissue just recently as of a couple of days.
Stifler's mom got that one. Damn, Stifler's mom got it going on. Yeah, Miss Wildside again saying what's up. Thank you so much. Building it a little bit further. Damn, nice. Appreciate that.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Damn, hell yeah.
Days ago, is that correct?
Yeah, a few days ago, yes, sir.
Okay, and when you look at the applicable tissues, can you look at the tissues and diagnose that there was spinal shock that occurred? Is that one of the diagnoses that can occur?
No,
Okay, so there's nothing physical you could look at and come to that determination, correct?
not exactly. It depends on where the wound was and clinical pathological correlation with what the implications of that wound are based on an extensive literature and experience and my own observations in many, many patients.
Okay, and so you don't look at a slide necessarily, you look at the literature, you take into consideration your experience with live patients and things of that nature. Is that true?
Yes, in other words, this particular
And members
lesion,
have access to the
what would you
emojis.
expect that the patient could or could not do after that was inflicted?
And then based upon that, you've given your opinion, what could happen or couldn't happen, basically. Is
That's
that
correct, sir.
Okay. And are you saying that that opinion is to 100% certainty? That
I don't
it did happen?
really think that applies in medicine except in very rare instances. I think that I could say that without any hesitation at all, there's overwhelming information that supports my opinion with regard to spinal shock occurring in this setting. I think that the Tuno article makes it very clear that they specifically used patients with lesions in this same general area, the upper cervical area, to carefully map the sequence of events. It's the best study that I know of recently that really documents the sequence of events. And all I can say is that 100% is not a term that is very useful under these circumstances. I think that the
Yo, Diana, what's
overwhelming
up?
possibility is beyond
doing good tonight?
any reasonable medical certainty that this is the classic lesion in the classic situation with the classic pace of development of the lesion. In other words, very rapid, very high in the neck in a human being, and severe, in which you will see spinal shock. That's a setting that paper after paper, book after book will tell you that's when you're going to see spinal shock if you're ever going to see it.
And board-certified pathologists would all agree with that, I take it. Is that your...
I
And
haven't,
also speculation as to what others would do.
Sustained.
Now, do board-certified pathologists disagree on issues?
Objection, that's irrelevant.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Is that something that's uncommon?
that's not uncommon, and it's well documented in literature also. And I think that as an example of that, sometimes particularly difficult tumor cases as to whether it's benign, malignant, if so how malignant, that can sometimes be shown to a battery of different well-trained pathologists, and there may be some disagreement.
Okay. Doctor, with reference to the Gardner article and the barium that was looked at under some type of an X-ray technology, did they make a statement in that article that the barium could have been put in the alveoli because of the removal of the lungs, squeezing of the lungs? Is that
Yes,
one reference?
after stating the finding, which is really the critical point, then he speculated as to how it could possibly have gotten down there. And part of the speculation, as I understood the article, was movement of the body. Part of it was manipulation of the lungs during removal of the lungs from the body.
In other words, that what he was postulating is that the barium was in the lungs because it physically got moved, and then when you move the lungs out, somehow you have to kind of grab it and pick it up, that it squeezes it to the point where the barium gets into the...
Boom! Bluebird, getting on that thing. That's how you do it right there. $1.99. Peanut Butter Falcon. Thank you very much, Bluebird. I appreciate that. Bluebird coming through. And you get a little song sometimes. You get a little song when you donate. Bluebird. And a gun country.
Gun country.
Thank you so much.
Brooklyn!
And one of those random ones.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
Hitting them all now. Now you just get a bunch of them.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Damn. We're building a wheel. That's how you build a wheel. The community takes it to get a wheel going, baby. Love it.
Well, is that correct?
I think that's adding a great deal to what he specified in the article.
Isn't that what the article talks about when it talks about the barium in the alveoli, that basically it's in there because of the removal of the lung process as opposed to just simply moving the body?
I didn't get that from the article because the article basically states the body was handled in exactly the same way that all bodies are after they put the barium in, and it followed the usual procedure, and then at autopsy 24 to 48 hours later, the barium was in the alveoli, and then speculation starts at that point as to how he thinks it might have gotten there. But that's beyond what the simple, straightforward observation was.
And the observation is that trace amounts of barium get into the alveoli. That he made that statement in the article. Is that true?
Well, the X-ray certainly would contradict that statement. There was quite a bit.
I'm not sure if I still have tattoos, Bluebird. If I do, I'll let you know. Right now, this wheel is for magnets, stickers, and I've got publicly buzzed coasters. I might have ran out of tattoos, but I might not have. I'll have to see. But if I got one, I'll throw one in there if you win. If I have one.
Blush, an alveolar pattern in many parts of both lungs, so it looked to me as though it was rather extensive. I would disagree with that statement.
Oh, Lord. Get a PB tat.
Thank you. Redirect.
Last point, and of course, the barium that got into the alveoli in that particular experiment didn't get there by breathing, did it, doctor?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Recross. All right, subject to recall, you're excused. Thank you for being here. You may step down.
At this point, we would arrest our case in rebuttal.
Subject to the few exhibits that are remaining.
Correct, which we can address outside the presence of the jury until we agree or disagree on those.
All right, thank you. Sir, rebuttal?
We're ready.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you.
Hey, they rested it now. The defense is rebuttal. This could go on forever. All right, where do we start next time we play this, which will probably be Thursday? Paramedic Daniel Stark is recalled to the stand. I do remember that name, so we're going to get a little action maybe on Thursday with this paramedic. But thanks everyone for coming through here tonight. I really appreciate it. We're about to go to a members-only part of this. And I will say my notes tonight, they're a little bit shorter, but the chapters were a little bit shorter on this one. So, and some of the information that Ann was talking about in these chapters wasn't pertinent to what we are diving mostly into, which is what? Ted Bundy. But it is still, I have a lot to go over. Come over, check it out. Again, members only, immediately following this. Otherwise, I will see you Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll do something for Phil Friday. Remember, every Friday night at 9 p.m. we start right here on YouTube before we head over to kick.com/publiclybuzzed. And then Sunday, I do have something really cool planned, part 2 of this last Sunday's live with Jack from Never a Truer Word. He's coming back one more time this Sunday, 3 Eastern, to finish up the rest of Ted Bundy's last interview. And yeah, right now we're about to go into more Ted Bundy, my friends. And yeah, I hope I see you there. Let's do it. Boom.